All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live today on the state of social media and what to expect in 2024. We've had really, really amazing reaction to this so far. I think we've had like 215 of you RSVP. So we're really excited to sort of talk about what we see here, both sort of what happened in 2023 and also, how you, both in your personal life and possibly your brands, can use social to your advantage this year. So we are very, very fortunate to have two social media experts here. Many of you already know them, probably know them better than me because they both have much higher followings than I do, which is a testament to the work they do. So I'm going to kick it over to both of them to do introductions, and then we'll dive into it. So Jasmine, we're going to go first to you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm very much so excited to talk social because I love social. A little bit of background about me. I call myself this multi-hyphenated creative. I'm currently a social listening analyst, but I also run my own creative agency. And I'm also a full-time content creator like everybody else. So I feel like I live, breathe, and eat social like 9 to 5, 5 to 9, all day, every day. So very much so excited to be here and to talk all things trends.
Excellent. And John Stephen, who I'm going to refer to as JS through this for short, but if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm John Stephen Stansel. I go by John Stephen or JS, whichever anybody prefers. I am a freelance social media manager, strategist, consultant, pretty much whatever you need. I can jump in there, mostly focusing on the entertainment industry. I work on the animated series Invincible for Amazon Prime Video. I've worked on the Avatar franchise, Amazon's Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, several other things, and also additionally higher ed and government as well, which is quite a diverse range. But yeah, kind of like Jasmine, I live, eat, breathe, sleep, social. It's pretty much what I do. I tell people asking me to talk about social media is like asking a 5-year-old to talk about their favorite dinosaur or Pokemon. Once they start, they won't stop, and that's me with social. So just be warned before you ask me any questions that you're going to get quite the answer.
Well, and I guess I just realized that I didn't introduce myself either. Then we'll get into it. So my name's Tim Fullerton, and I run my own digital marketing agency called Fullerton Strategies, which provides both fractional CMO services, but also project by project based client work as well, websites and social. And then previously, I worked both for WeWork. I ran the social and organic content team at WeWork for 5 years. And I also built a digital team at the U.S. Department of the Interior under the Obama administration, which I highly recommend if you need a mental health break, going and look at those accounts, because it is mostly images and videos of beautiful American public lands. So I recommend you check those out. But let's just dive right into it here. And obviously both of you and myself, we're all pretty obsessed, maybe more obsessed than we should be with social, and are on it quite a bit. And I just would love to sort of just do a brief recap of last year and sort of things that you saw last year, both the good and the bad. And I'm going to kick it over to Jasmine first. But before we do, just please keep dropping comments and questions in the chat. And we want this to be sort of a fluid process. And already seeing some of our favorite folks chiming in. So Jasmine, what did you see in social last year? And and what are you excited about in 2024?
I feel like so many things happened last year in 2023. I was just reading this New York Times article, and it literally talked about all the things. And I was like, all this stuff happened in 2023. I think brands started to really identify who they were in 2023, specifically on TikTok. And I mean by culture, trending formats, even really big on like humor, being unhinged, and tone of voice. I think the year before that, where like TikTok was new, brands were really trying, like they were kind of tiptoeing and who am I? What does that look like? Who is my consumer? I think in 2023, they really allowed culture to be driven in their content strategies. And on top of that, I feel like brands were able to go outside of the lines a little bit. I think a lot of brands kind of was like, ask for forgiveness later. We'll talk to our legal team later, and decided to put out all these things that they probably wouldn't be able to do the year before. Some of the things that I'm excited for in 2024, I would say, is like long form content. I'm very biased by that, but I really am interested to see how brands take this idea of storytelling from 30 seconds to 5 minutes to 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And two, I'm very interested to see how brands tap into branded merch, which is something that's really big for Gen Z this year. So obviously the rise of TikTok Shop, they're trying to, they're trying to compete with Amazon. But I think brands are starting to see that like social commerce is much bigger than just Amazon. It's very much so like, okay, TikTok Shop is taking over, but how do we tap into brands in a creative way? I think Dr. Pepper did a really good with this last year. I noticed that they partnered with a small business every single year for branded merch, like rugs, pins, candles. And I'm like, and they were selling out. And I was like, this is insane. I would never buy a Dr. Pepper candle, right? But they sold out every single month. So I think brands are really going to like tap into like branded merch this year. So I'm excited to kind of see that like very much so high level.
Excellent. I think we're definitely going to dive into more of that because it's
Yeah.
such an interesting topic and there's so much to say there. We did get a question. I'm just going to say it off the top. Yes, there will be a recording after the fact. It'll sit on this page in perpetuity, and we'll put it on YouTube as well, and we'll share that link later. But JS, I'm going to go to you for some of the things from 2023 and what you're looking forward to.
I think I will always remember 2023 as the year Twitter collapsed. It always broke my heart. Up till this point, it has been my favorite platform, both personally and from a brand standpoint. And whether or not your brand has been active on Twitter, it's always been a useful resource for social listening. And as it slowly or rapidly deteriorates, it kind of comes and goes each day. Brands are going to have to decide. I don't think I saw a single slide deck in 2023 that didn't have a slide that said, what are we going to do if we can't use Twitter anymore?
Yeah.
And I've seen brands that are quitting Twitter, leaving it all together. Maybe they're quiet quitting Twitter. I think there are more brands quiet quitting Twitter than the ones that are saying, we're not going to do this anymore. They're just kind of slowly phasing it out. Which, again, I think is a tough thing. We're all kind of looking to see what's going to be the replacement and if there actually is a one-to-one replacement. I don't think we're going to see that. I think Twitter was very much a product of its time. It came along, at the beginning of the mobile internet, really was based on SMS texting. Threads is what it is. I think, we'll get into some predictions for the future of 2024. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Threads. I don't think it's going to be the exact replacement for Twitter. And then the rise of LinkedIn. Like, here we are on LinkedIn. Like, if you had told me in 2022 that I would be like active, like doing a LinkedIn live with you, and I would have 35,000 followers on LinkedIn, and I'd be using it every day, I would have laughed in your face. I would have been like, really? No, not on LinkedIn. And now I am using LinkedIn every day. I'm enjoying it. I'm seeing brands kind of start to come up with strategies, not in a traditional sense with a brand voice on LinkedIn, but okay, how can we get our executives, how can we get our employees more active on LinkedIn? Because things are happening there. The only thing I don't like about it is I do wish there was like a room. If I were in charge of LinkedIn today, I would start like a section or a weekend, like the LinkedIn water cooler or like LinkedIn late night or something, to get people active on LinkedIn in the evenings and weekends where they can talk and be their full selves. Because I don't think people on LinkedIn know me as a social media professional, but they don't know, oh, I play guitar. I'm a nerdy guy. I have a 7-year-old boy. I love to read comic books and Marvel movies and Star Wars. And those are a part of me. I'm more than just my job. And also that's how I got to where I am is on Twitter. I talked about my love of comic books and social media. And that's how I ended up with working on the social team for Invincible. So we'll see where that goes.
I was going to ask you, JS, what do you think about Twitter for Super Bowl? Because it's such a big conversation and brands are like, are we still using Twitter for Super Bowl for like community management and social listening? Or do you feel like brands are going to, sorry, Tim, but I was just curious. I wanted to know, do you feel like brands are going to pivot anywhere else? Because I'm just like biased. I'm like in the middle. I just don't know.
I think in some respect they're still going to, because that's how it's been. I mean, look at the Golden Globes. Twitter was hopping on the Golden Globes last week. And I think we're still going to, because people like don't really know where else to centrally go for real-time communication. Twitter's still really the only game in town. Threads really hasn't figured that out yet, or I don't think they want to be that.
Yeah.
And that's a need. That's somebody needs to fill that. And there's not one centralized place where everybody goes. So I think you will see people like who are, like, man, I don't like Twitter. I don't like what Musk is doing over there. I can't use the platform over there, but it's Super Bowl night. I want to see what's going on. They'll hold their nose and get it there.
Yeah.
And Elon and Elon and Linda will brag about it the next day for sure.
Oh yeah.
But then it's going to be a dead zone again. I posted a while back. I feel like Twitter is like a dying mall. It's, the anchor stores leave, and then suddenly you just have a bunch of cell phone kiosks, and that's what the ads feel like right now there. So that might be the one thing, like the big fire sale that brings everybody back for a little bit, but then the mall's still dying.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think I agree with everything that's been said right now. And I think that, I was the biggest Twitter fan for a very long time. I've been on since 2007. I mean, I've come from a political background, so it kind of came natural that was sort of the platform where conversations about news and politics were happening, and also where reporters are. So where you wanted to get, your message in front of those folks. And that has obviously died now, and especially now that I'm, mostly focused on B2B, I have told my clients to leave. Like, don't need to make a big proclamation about it, but it's just so toxic now. Especially Elon, like the things he's been saying, just horrendous, and letting Alex Jones and conspiracy theorists back. It's just not a good place for brands to be. But I agree on the Super Bowl. I think the reality is, like, it is the only real-time app. There is an algorithm on there now, but I think it will be there for that one night, and then everybody will go. But I also agree, like, there needs to be a replacement for this. Like, I'm really curious why Threads has made this, at least early on, decision. They were like, we don't want to focus on news and politics. And I'm like, well, then why did you build a real-time app? What's the point of this thing if you're not, because those are the conversations that keep people coming back. And then that's how the niche communities develop, when there's already people here looking for these things, and people start to branch out. And when they did their announcement, they had all these celebs come on and like post one thread and then disappear. It's like, yeah, great for like initial engagement and excitement, but then like they all left. So I actually like Threads. I think there's potential there, but I agree, it's like not like, I think they need to change their emphasis to be news and politics. Otherwise, it's just not going to grow the way it needs to. But I also, I want to, it's interesting to go back to LinkedIn, and like, I was having a conversation with a client this morning about the Twitter down, like of all of the social apps that have benefited from Twitter's downfall, I would say LinkedIn is really one of the top ones. And, I'm curious from both your perspectives, like, if you have seen brands really, because of the sort of reduction of use of Twitter or elimination, like, are you seeing more and more brands coming onto LinkedIn and, using the app the way it's supposed to be used?
I see a variety. What I'm seeing more of is brands encouraging their employees to build some sort of presence on LinkedIn, but sprinkling in the brand in some form or fashion. So if it's talking about a Shorty award that they have won, or a new campaign that they're working on, or new business that they had developed, that's what I'm seeing a lot of. I haven't seen too many brands jump on the LinkedIn bandwagon yet, but I do see this rise of like LinkedIn influencers. And I'm seeing a lot more people, I think, Jay, as you mentioned this, being themselves on LinkedIn. I know for me personally, I weave in my tone of voice within a little professionalism to kind of just showcase who I am. It's like, hey, I'm about my business, but I still have a life, and I still have a personality, and I'm still an individual that works at the specific company. And I still do post a news around like the companies and things that I do work of. So that's kind of what I'm seeing from a LinkedIn perspective.
Jess, what about your thoughts on what you're seeing?
I agree with all of that. I think one thing I am seeing a lot of is more executives being the face of their brand on LinkedIn. And I think what we're going to start seeing is like training for some of those executives of like, hey, here's how you can best represent, your brand on LinkedIn, and be that voice, and be that human behind the brand there, rather than the brands themselves. I don't think we're going to see like a Wendy's sort of style brand on LinkedIn. It's just not.
Which I'm okay with, by the way.
Yeah, I would love that. Like every so often, I'll get like I'll say something post something on LinkedIn that's not completely about work, and I'll get a comment like, "This isn't Facebook or Twitter." I'm like, "Well, you don't have to follow me," and you use it how you want to use it. So I think the tone of LinkedIn is changing a lot, and we may see a little bit more of that. I would love for that to happen a little bit, but for now, I think like Jasmine said, it's having your employees represent the brand. It's the CEO, and we're seeing more interest in that.
Yeah, and I will say because I mostly focus on B2B, so like I've seen that as well. Like business pages don't perform particularly well, right? Like it's really hard to build those and turn those into a real organic channel unless you're putting money behind them. But the real benefit, I think, as you both pointed out, is the executives using their channels. I'll give you an example of a success that happened actually earlier this week. I had a client that is about to launch a new version of their product. And, we worked together and wrote a piece about, all the exciting things that are coming. And we just added a CTA at the end that said like, drop a comment if you want a demo. And I believe it generated somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 8 calls. So direct leads from an organic post, no money behind it. And just followed through with DM. And then, they were all relevant. Some of them weren't necessarily 100% aligned with like who their customer profile is, but they work in the legal world. They were all attorneys. They all work for big firms. And so, I think there's real opportunity there, not just from, organic and getting your brand awareness out there, but there's a selling component here as well that I think is really, really interesting, which is really hard to do on the other channels. And I think it's really, really exciting from that perspective.
That's a big method right now, I've noticed, that is actually growing on Instagram. It's driving your consumers through a CTA off of the app actually onto broadcast channel, them purchasing one of your digital products. It's like CTA driven copy is like one of the biggest trends that I've seen for 2024, especially this Q1. So it's interesting to hear that you say that on LinkedIn, because I've also been seeing that very heavy on Instagram. And I too have fallen for the send a DM. Hey, I want more information. I've so fallen for that too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's like, so on the LinkedIn side, like obviously everybody here is a big fan. We've got the biggest LinkedIn super fan on the planet on the chat right now, who is Liam Darmoudi, one of the biggest proponents. So, but I'd love to talk about some other, are there other things that brands should be thinking about on LinkedIn, and specifically as far as, using organic? I'm not even going to talk about paid because I think for a lot of folks, it's very expensive and it's hard to break through. But are there other tips or recommendations or things that you would see coming in 2024 that brands should be on the lookout on this platform?
I'll let you go first, JS. I feel like you're about to say something.
I mean, we'll see how. I think social listening is going to continue to be a big component of how people are talking about your brand and what's coming up. But I think one interesting thing that's happened over last week was I'm sure everyone here saw that Stanley Cup cut and paste story that was just in everybody's feed. And I made a comment about it, about how like, why are we just doing cut and paste plagiarism here? Like I started my career in higher ed. I wasn't going to be a social media manager. I was going to be a literature professor. So plagiarism is like my cardinal sin. Like, do not copy other people's stuff. And actually the president of Stanley commented on my post saying, I was shocked by it. People were sending me, emailing me this story, which was amazing story about our company, but it had just been, I got an email from 5 different authors, and he wanted to make it clear, like, this is not marketing on our part. We did not put it up to anybody up to it. Because a lot of people were commenting, like, did Stanley, encourage this? So I think being aware of those sort of things and how your brand is discussed on LinkedIn is going to be of paramount importance, which is going to be a lot harder because LinkedIn is not as open as Twitter, for social listening. So being aware of how people perceive your brand just on any social platform is going to be important. But I think LinkedIn is going to play a larger role in that.
Yeah.
I was really surprised at the the sheer amount of people who literally just ripped that post off. Like I don't think I've seen something like that on such a scale before. And you would think, it's not that, viral posts are not new, but and in particular on this platform, and I saw it on Threads too, but like it's fascinating to me that so many people just literally ripped it. Like,
and if you're inspired by it, there is a button for that.
Right.
There's a share button,
Mhm.
and you can add your own thoughts and comments.
Yeah.
I don't know who the original author is, but whoever that was, like, I feel so bad for them. Like, they wrote an amazing post, and a bunch of people just hijacked it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but at least people seem to be wise to it, or most people are getting wise to it and seeing it, and then they're like, "Did you write this?" So, and I think Liam just dropped something in the comment about there is a self-policing element on LinkedIn that I don't think there really is in other places, which is good to help hopefully keep most people honest, or at least for people to see like, oh, this was a post that was ripped off. I'm going to add one more, and people who follow me are probably so tired of me talking about this, but like LinkedIn Live is a huge potential resource for businesses. I mean, right now we had 250 people RSVP for this, 215, sorry, RSVP for this, and currently we've got about 50 people live right now. Now, imagine trying to do that on a webinar where you are driving somebody that they have to go fill out a form, and then they have to come back and watch. And I think, like, obviously webinars have a purpose. If you're really you need like email capture into a sales funnel directly, like, yes, sure, continue to do that. But the fact that we have 50 people on here and over 200 people RSVP'd, and it cost us zero, other than the Restream tool that I use, which is $19 a month, it cost us nothing. And I think, I've had companies, clients that have, move from webinars where they got 8 to 10 people and are getting hundreds of people to watch these. So I think it's a really interesting tool for people to use. And it's, obviously you're seeing it in action right now, but I think there's just huge opportunities to get in front of a much larger customer base than, a Zoom or however else you would do webinars.
Yeah, I was gonna. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what I would love to see though is some sort of real-time posting element, because one thing I loved about Twitter was at conferences, you'd be in a conference session and somebody say something really smart, and you tweet that out. Or I love speaking at conferences and getting off the stage and looking at my Twitter feed and seeing questions that I can reply to. People who found, or even just people like, I think you're full of it. I don't,
Right.
but like, I would love to see something like that on LinkedIn. I would love to be able, once this is over, that this chat window right here is going to disappear. I'd love for some of these comments to be shared on LinkedIn, where I could go back and see them. So there's so many opportunities. I would love to see some things for LinkedIn to do.
I think LinkedIn Live, though, too, is also a great resource for brands to kind of show up authentically and really like start to understand or test and learn how to do their storytelling, because there's so many brands that are under fire right now for things that employees have said, or certain transcripts that have came out. And so obviously there's so many people that are laid off, and they are interviewing companies and looking at companies and wondering, like, what is their ethos, what is their mission, where are their values, like who's on their corporate board, like who are actually people that are working there. And you can only see pictures on LinkedIn. So I think doing different webinars and different departments, allows you to kind of just learn the company a little bit more, but 2, authentically do storytelling. 3, it's a way to get free content, because you were just talking about this tool that you can literally take this, they can chop it up, give you 20 different videos, and there goes your content calendar for the next 2 months. So it's like a win-win all around.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll see if Liam can drop the link in, because he's the big proponent. It's a tool called Opus, which I can basically, after this, download this full session, drop it into Opus, and it will actually generate probably 10 to 20 videos of any size that you want, and it captions them and it turns them into vertical videos. So it takes this, what's a block across, and we'll put it on top. And there's a free version. So you're really not spending any money on it. And like you said, I'm going to have content in you guys, because we're going to share it to each of you, obviously, as well. And like, there's stuff for us now for the next few weeks where we can talk about, and again, with no money or very, very little money, So this is something, and I've seen some questions about nonprofits and public advocacy groups. Like, these are all things that aren't just for businesses. These are things that everybody can use, and really not break the bank. And Liam has already put in one of the clips. Thank you. But yeah, these are low cost or no cost ways to reach larger audiences, which is why I'm really, really excited about it. So, but I'm gonna move. We're gonna move from LinkedIn. We've spent a good amount of time here, and we did a session a few weeks ago. Liam and I did on LinkedIn. If people want to check that out for more in-depth conversation, but I did get a couple questions about nonprofits specifically and public advocacy groups. One, and I had to call it out from John in Maine, since I am from Maine, so I had to take a question from Maine. So this is a general social question, but like, how should we can just say organizations with limited budgets, like how should they be approaching social? And we can have a little bit of the, how much of organic, is there a paid component as well? Like, and Jasmine, I want to go to you first. Like, how would you recommend that for organizations that really don't have a lot of money to use on social?
Yeah, I think one big component is UGC. I think you'll start to see the difference between, and it also fascinates me that there's a difference between influencers, creators, and UGC. Like, I feel like they're all the same in one, but I think UGC is a good component of that, because it allows you to get a lot of content for on a low amount of budget. But two, I think it's understanding like the selectivity of platforms. I think 22 and 2023 brands felt like they had to be everywhere at the same time. And you could kind of tell, like, their TikTok had consistent content, but their posting cadence on like Instagram and YouTube fell. And it's kind of like when you would go to every single platform, it just, on my end, it just didn't look like they just had their ducks in a row. So I think it's like the selectivity of platforms. Be somewhere and master it and be really, really good at it. Understand your audiences and test and learn, different content formats, understanding animations versus memes versus doing broadcast channels. I think it's taking a platform and really mastering it and then allowing yourself to go to different other platforms is where I would start. And then two, being able to do content in-house. Like, literally, this phone is where every brand is creating majority of their content. I work for a lot of these big corporations and they're using in-house content through their phone. They're not, they don't have a heavy production team. They don't have the budgets, to be able to bang out these campaigns. Your phone and hiring somebody in-house can allow you to do that. And from there, I think you're able to kind of test and learn and see, okay, this is the content that works. This is the content that doesn't work. So that's where I would start if I was starting a brand from scratch.
I agree 100% with the phone stuff too. Like, and there are features on the phone that you can't get on desktop. Like, as soon as this live is over, I'm gonna post to an account with 500,000 followers from my phone because there are features on Instagram that I can't do from my desktop, and that is madness to me. But to answer the question at hand, for teams with limited budgets, for me it is reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Go like you said, Jasmine, pick one platform, master it before you expand to the next. You don't have to post every single day. I see this all the time. Like, oh, you've got to post to do the algorithm. You've got to post XYZ. Post to social when you have something worth posting to social, right? Keep it there, quality content, and then repurpose that content. Just like Tim was saying, like, this webinar is great because how many content clips are the three of us going to get out of this that we can post to our own channels later with minimal effort? I'm excited about trying Opus a little bit. And don't be afraid to repeat yourself. I think, people kind of cringe and like, oh, I don't want to say the same thing again to my audience and all. They probably didn't see it, but when you go see a band, you want to hear the hits, right? So it's okay to repurpose that content. And even what I'll do on my personal channels is from time to time, I'll go back to content that I posted when, a couple years ago when I had much fewer followers, and I'm a better writer now. So I can, I'm a better content creator. So I can craft that. Why didn't that? I think there was a nugget of something there. Why didn't it land? How can I rewrite it, retool it in a way that will work for my audience now? And I can capitalize on the skills that I've gained in the meantime. So reduce, reuse, recycle. Those three things, if you've got a limited budget, are paramount.
Yeah, and there used to be, it's obviously different now, it's probably less, but like there was a stat at one point on Twitter that like generally speaking, a person on Twitter saw about 10 to 15% of the content that flew through their feed in a day.
Mhm.
And that's probably being generous. And now it's probably even less because they've restricted the organic a bit more. And frankly, less people are posting there. But so your points about reusing, it's like 100%, and like, do not feel bad about it. And, you know, it's just, it's a really simple way to get more reach out of it. And the other things that I would add on top of these are to engagement. And I think, like, if people take the time to write to you a thoughtful and meaningful comment, engage with it. Like, it takes staff time, but it doesn't take any other time. I mean, when I was at the Interior Department and I ran the U.S. Department's the Interior's Instagram, I used to spend 10, 15 minutes every day, and people were like blown away that a government agency would respond, and they weren't like they didn't have to be like thought through and approved. It was literally just like showing that there was a human being there, and that is like, that is gold to a company. If you've got somebody that's willing to like engage with you, you need to write them back. You need to, like, because you either deepen the engagement with a customer that you've already got, or you're hooking somebody that might be looking for information as well. So I would just say that stuff costs nothing, and you should definitely do that.
And I will say this, that's not just a tip for small businesses. I think big brands need to do that as well, because it's low-hanging fruit and the rewards are so high. Just to give like one example is, working on the anime series Invincible, when we announced that we were greenlit for season 2 and season 3, somebody replied, we posted, we're going to come back for season 2 and 3. Somebody replied, source ? And I just went to my computer and just typed the words, us, we're the source. And that got a ton of engagement. But several months later, a fan screen capped that interaction and posted it to his social channels. And it got it went viral again. Like, it got another loop. It got even more engagement than the initial post. So you just don't know. Just from 2 words, we got twice the engagement for free. Right?
Yeah. And I was gonna say I just read this stat that said 76% of brands, their number one KPI is engagement for 2024.
Yeah.
So I can believe that wholeheartedly. So community managers, there's always a need for them. Like, always respond, always DM, do your proactive, like, surprise and delight. All those things are part of engagement.
And then we've gotten a couple questions about organic versus paid, and it's always a tough one, right? And I have my thoughts, but I'll hold them until I give you guys an opportunity to speak. But like, when you're approaching social, how do you balance the paid and organic sides of the house?
I'll let you go first, JS, because
I'll go. Well, my initial background is in higher ed and government, so I had no budget for paid. Like, I am used, and then when I moved to entertainment, like, my first slide deck was like, oh, we can save money here and here and here. My boss at the time just said, stop. The client has money, So, I generally approach things with the idea of like, oh, I may not have paid budget for this. What do we do if we don't get paid budget? So I'm very much a pro organic first. A lot of people will disagree with me on that, but I think it starts there, because with organic, you've got to be a little bit more scrappy. You've got to do a little bit more social listening and key into what your audience wants to hear, and what they're going to catch on to and help spread for you. So my feeling is, like, start organic and then think about paid afterwards, how we can capitalize on it. I don't think that's a perfect strategy for everybody, but with my background of like never having budget, that's kind of how I tend to approach it.
Yeah, I would say this. I think for me, I wrote a post about this like 2 months ago, and it was literally the same words: prioritize organic social in 2024. And it just went across, and people were agreeing with me. I think organic social is needed. And I think brands in 2024 are starting to realize that it's a community builder and it's needed for awareness. And I think it is perfect for always on content, which for majority of brands' feeds is like 75 to 80% of their feeds. When I look at paid, I think paid is for those activations, it's for those LTOs, it's for those pieces of content, not necessarily that's gaining traction, but for brands to consider your product and for you to drive conversion. That's how I look at paid. I wouldn't put paid behind a video that's trending over a cultural moment or a trending sound. I would let it organically just boost on its own. But if you're trying to promote a product or you're trying to drive a link or trying to consider your brand for something, signups, websites, whatever the case is, that's when I would leverage paid for. I think this year brands are starting to realize like we need organic, and it's easier to sell into executives like, hey, organic is actually like a community builder and it's absolutely needed to drive some type of conversion in the KPI like framework.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and I'm gonna rip off a comment in here too, because this was already was thinking from Caitlin, who just said organic is a great way to test what resonates with your audience before throwing money behind it. And I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, there is a time for performance media. I am souring more and more on advertising because it's costing more and delivering less. But that said, I think that, you know, there is an opportunity to use your organic channels to find out what resonates with people and to use that. And I would actually argue that you should be testing organic content as your ads. Like I think the highly produced, glossy stuff, like nobody wants to see that anymore, I would argue. Obviously, like the Coca-Colas and the massive brand or the Pepsis and, you know, such, like they do that stuff because they have to be everywhere. But like if you're a smaller business, like people just want to see like authentic content, whether it's on an ad or not.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised we don't see more TV ads that are just straight like iPhone shots, probably because agencies don't make as much money when they do that. But that would be my recommendation for 2024 is using your organic channels for that testing. Because otherwise, like and we actually did this at my previous company where we started to test organic content, like in comparing it to the agencies that were producing like the ads. And the first tests were very promising, and they were beating out the performance media stuff. So I think that that's going to be a huge area for growth 2024.
I was going to say, I think brands also should think of paid from the influencer piece too, because I saw this post on LinkedIn the other day. I'm sure you've seen it, where this guy talks about how he spent $200,000 on an influencer and only received $75 back in sales.
Yeah.
I think brands need to put influencer into that budget as well, because yes, you have these influencers that have millions of followers, but a lot of influencers cannot drive conversion. They don't have subscribers. And it's something that as a creator, I'm learning too. Like, how do I drive conversion on, you know, a LTK or on an Amazon? And brands are starting to see, like, they're not just throwing money at the wall anymore. They're like, no, I want my return back investment. So brands should consider that too when they're paying influencers.
So I totally agree. I actually think the paying for macro influencers, unless you're just doing it for brand awareness, is a waste of money. And I think that I did see that post actually. And I think, you know, look, like when creators get so big, those audiences also do not engage at the same rates, right? The real value, and I think they maybe on this one, or there was another one where they led into, is micro influencers, people who have, you know, anywhere from, I mean, 10 is a little bit low, but like, you know, let's say 15 to 50,000, even up to 100.
Yeah.
That's to me the sweet spot. And I have had success with clients doing that where, you know, we did, I think I can say this, we did it at WeWork. Like we got people, we basically bartered 3 months of free space for social posts promoting our daily offering where you could book by the day or the hour. And we had about a 3-to-1 return on revenue to investment. And so it was real money, but then we also had all that content that we could use and repurpose and white label and whatever. So yeah, I think people are going to pay Kim Kardashian whatever stupid amount, you know, for the visibility and the media, probably getting the like press to talk about it. But I think the real sweet spot's in the 100K.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure. I don't know, JS, if you have any thoughts on that?
I agree 100% on that.
Yeah. So we got a question specific to YouTube. And I feel like YouTube is always like overlooked. Like it's obviously a massive platform, right? It's the second largest search engine in the world. They make billions. It's like the most profitable acquisition in the history of the world. Maybe Instagram is close, but you know, I'd love to talk a little bit about, you know, your thoughts on YouTube this year and how brands should best use that platform. And Jasmine, I'll go first to you.
Yeah. It's crazy because with the Pepsis and brands that I work with, YouTube still struggles to be a platform that a lot of brands struggle on. One, because you have to have the production budget to keep the content flowing. I would 100% recommend repurposing. I think JS, you said reuse, repurposing your reels and your TikToks on YouTube Shorts. I think that's the best way to keep your like subscribers kind of coming in and keeping them engaged until you're ready and or have produced specific content on your YouTube. If it's an activation for Super Bowl, if it's something coming up for Women's History Month, or even just doing a day in the life in your office or whatever the case is around whatever your product is. But I think the biggest and the only recommendation I would be is reuse and repurpose the content on your other platforms onto YouTube Shorts until you're ready to kind of have that production team to kind of create that content for you.
Mm-hmm. Jess, thoughts on YouTube?
I definitely agree with that and using YouTube Shorts. In addition, like I feel like I don't think technically YouTube is a social network. I refer to it as a parasocial network
Yeah.
because the barrier to entry is too high for the average person to post.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not like Facebook or Twitter, Instagram. You snap a photo, send up. It requires some knowledge and expertise of videography and film editing. That said, there's still a social element that I think a lot of people ignore, and that's those comments. And YouTube comments are notoriously like just cesspits, but you can build a community there if you take the time and pay attention to that. And I think a lot of brands ignore that because one, it is very time consuming. Two, it can quickly devolve into a really toxic place, but there is good there. So taking the time to pay attention to those comments and engage with those commenters and build a community around your content, I think is something that brands really need to do more of.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. And I think YouTube Shorts is actually an underutilized app. I think there's better organic reach on YouTube Shorts than TikTok, for example. And mostly, look, they're competing with TikTok, and so they want the audience over there, so they boost it a little bit. But like, you should use that to your advantage. And and I think the other thing that is really exciting about YouTube Shorts is it is a great way to drive subscription growth on your channel. It's not a good way if you monetize. It's not a good way to make money, at least right now, because frankly, it's a minute long, and so there's limited amount of space that ads can be thrown on it. And I've heard of videos that have gotten millions of views and they get like $3,000 or $4,000. It's those, and then so imagine what your content in the thousands is going to get, not much. But if you're looking to build an audience, like I had a client that they did a video. They're a medical education company, and they did this video of a procedure on Shorts, and it took off. It actually ended up getting it's still going, but it's over 10 million views. But I think the most exciting part about it is that they gained over 25,000 subscribers, and they were big, but they were at 50. So like a 33% lift off of a YouTube short video that was content that they already had and repurposed. I think that there is massive opportunity there to use Shorts to drive your audience to your longer form content, which, Jasmine, I know you mentioned you're excited about long form content. Like you've got to kind of balance them and not expect them to both do the same things, which, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there for folks. So we did have a question. I'm going to give you all, and I'll answer it too, but a very tough question. And it came from the chat is, how do you get your audience to engage more with your content? The $1 billion question.
I'll say this. I think one, it's obviously including a CTA within all of your pieces of content. But then two, I think it's going above and beyond and actually maybe reacting to consumers first. I've seen a lot of like community managers where, for example, your brand a creator might have not tagged your brand, right? But you see it pops up on your social listening dashboard. When you type in your brand name, you see it. It should be like an alarm kind of goes off in your head where you're saying, hey, let me engage with this. It's like the surprise and delight element, because what you try to do is then you've garnered their audience and now you get their reach and their followers are coming back to you. I think that's a specific piece of community management that a lot of brands kind of miss. It's not always just responding under your comments like, oh, we only have 2 comments, but there's probably a whole conversation going on around your brand on a different platform somewhere else that you don't know about. But just because you haven't just done the extra step of maybe searching or looking at specific hashtags, and responding to them in a moment is probably how you can get your people to just engage with your comment more. Engage with your content more.
Yes. Thank
I
you,
was like,
Jasmine.
you're shaking
You
your
took
head.
the words out of my
Yeah.
mouth. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's social listening is, when
Yeah.
done well, it's like having a superpower.
Yeah.
It is amazing. And the engagement you can generate of going in and finding those conversations where your brand can shine, where you can engage fans, where you can engage people who are talking about anything just remotely related to your brand.
Yeah.
Now, I will have put a caveat. One, you've got to trust your community manager, your social media manager to be able to do that well. Two, your social media managers and community managers need to be trained to be very good at your brand voice and knowing what to engage with and what to not touch up a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
But if done well, it is magic. That is how you build that community. It takes a lot of skill, and that's why you need to pay social media managers more and respect that skill and know-how. And I've worked for brands sometimes where I've had to ask permission to like a tweet. And I understand where some of that comes from, because there is a danger. Like, as a social media manager, you constantly have to be proving yourself to go, look, I know, there's like a window of trust that you have to build. But when you get a social media manager and you give them that trust to go and engage those audience and find those conversations, you're going to build a very large community, and they are going to not just be engaged, they're going to be loyal.
Yeah. That's very
Yeah.
true.
And JS, you mentioned, I think you write a fair amount on this, and I'm sure this audience will prove, like, the brands that are going to succeed are the ones that trust their social teams and hire experts to do the jobs. Like, this notion that, you would have to get a tweet, approve liking a tweet, which I've had experience as well. And, but like, the social media team is basically your megaphone, but also your listening device for your customers, and trusting those people and paying them the right amount so that you actually get, treat it as the professional position that it is hugely, is very, very important. And then I'll just add, for how to get your content seen by more people. We'll get, there's been some awesome recommendations from the panel here, but it is hard. Like, no matter what, it is difficult. And I think that is one of the things that I struggle with on LinkedIn, is like, everybody posts these like rosy things, and it makes it seem like all this stuff is easy, and if you just hustle harder, you'll do it. And that's not true.
Yeah.
But I do think the one piece of advice that I can give is, every brand's going to be different. Every brand's going to have different, different amount of people following them. But like, if you can really figure out what you can provide that nobody else can, you're going to build it. You'll be able to build an audience. Now, are you going to get to 1 million? Probably not. But like, if you can figure out what your niche is and what, and thinking about what value I am providing for my followers, that's half the game. And then you can figure out, like, from there. That's what, like, at the Interior Department, which is kind of an extreme example, but it's like, we managed all of America's public lands, national parks, and wildlife refuges and things like that. So it's like, okay, well, we have this store of just fantastic photography, like, hidden behind on a server. Like, let's show this to the world. And like, no, you couldn't really get it anywhere else. Yeah. And so that's obviously like a big example, but like, everybody's got that. Like, if it's a product that you are the only one that have that version, like, tell that story, like, give the behind the scenes, like, do something to like do that. But I'm not going to pretend like it's not an easy task. It is a challenge. That's for sure. So we've only got probably about 5 more minutes left. So if you all have questions, now would be the time to drop them in. But I just saw a great one from Melissa, who said, what is the one metric we should be paying attention to in 2024? And JS, I'm going to go to you first.
I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say all of them. Like, because people ask me this question a lot, like, what's the most important metric? And like, my feeling is like, every data point is a part of the story, right? We can talk about engagement, but if we don't also include reach in that, you're not really getting the full story. So my feeling is like, give me all the data that you can give me. Let me zoom out and take that bird's eye view and look at everything, and then I can tell you the story.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that's a bit of a cop out, but that's honestly how I view it and believe it.
I have three. I wouldn't say one because I'm very much so in the same boat as you. I would say engagements, impressions, and sentiment would be my top three, because you want to see that people saw your post, but you also want to know if they engage with it. And I think it's also important to understand sentiment, which is really big with social listening. Like, what is the share of voice and how are people perceiving your brand? If it's a negative and it's positive, if it's neutral. And I think, yes, where you can see a lot of commentary, and that's when you're able to kind of understand like the perception that the consumers have around your brand. So those would be like the top three I would focus on in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to add to what you both have said because I agree with all of it. I mean, and JS, your point about engagement plus reach, it's not just about engagement. I guess the other thing is really like determining what your real KPIs are for your business or your organization, and then really figuring out, okay, is this brand awareness? So then that's where obviously engagement and reach matter the most. If it's sales, obviously, like, that's a challenge on social, but like you need to be able to track, those leads and whether they're converting or not. So it does really depend. But I think it's not just engagement, and that would have been the easy answer for all of us. So I'm glad that you guys didn't take that route. So obviously maybe I'll say one of the most important, but the beauty of social is you've got all this data at your disposal. So you need to use it to really determine like what's working and what's not, for sure. Let's see. We've got a couple other quick questions I think we can bang through here. Let's see. Nisha says, do you have any advice on B2B industries who are only used to posting promotional organic posts? I'm going to start, and I'm going to say, if you can come up with and make recommendations to not do that or to try different approaches, that is my biggest recommendation, because I would argue that approach is understandable. That like if you're stuck and you're being told to do that, I get it, but like it's a recipe for failure, because it's really, people smell inauthenticity a mile away.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe it's like convincing one of your executives to be on LinkedIn, so they start to see like the benefit of them using it on their personal account. Or if you're able to like, carve out a test, and one of the beauties of social is like you can test everything. So like I would recommend like trying a different approach, but not necessarily throwing it all in the trash and starting over, but like do some things to lead your leadership team along the way so that they can see the benefits. If you folks have recommendations as well.
I think you're right on the money with that. I think the key word in Nish's question is promotional organic posts, and people, that's the promotional part is the problem. Like it's okay to do that now and then, but when every single post is giving that hard sell, nobody likes that. Like, I mean, no, if we were like that in real, well, again, I even hate to use the term, the internet is real life, but if you went to a party and just like said, "Oh, hi, come, here's my business card," blah, blah, nobody's going to want to talk to you, right? Nobody wants to go to a car dealership.
Right.
Nobody wants to go to a car dealership because they're going to do that the whole time. So, I mean, it's the same way on social.
Yeah. I think you kind of said it all. So I have nothing to add.
Yeah, I mean, look, some companies are inflexible and they won't change. And if that is the case, then, and if you're in social, like, obviously if you need it for financial reasons, it's understandable, but it may be, maybe time to be checking out some other options as well. But all right, we're going to do one more question, because we really do have to wrap. And I know JS has a very big post he needs to make here pretty soon for one of his clients. So we're going to bounce off, but we're going to end with this one, which is related. How do social media managers build trust with management, especially after a crisis?
Ooh.
I've been through many crises. Being in higher ed, universities are like just a breeding ground for crisis, especially after 2016. It's just been crisis after crisis. It involves trust and building that trust. It takes time. The crisis should help you build the trust. I hate to say it, sometimes it's going into that room to the executive and go, "I told you so." I've often called myself like the social media Cassandra. Like I'm always predicting disaster, like, but I've got to tell you that it's going to happen. So I think part of that is having, after that crisis, sitting down, having a post-mortem and saying what went wrong. How can we fix the next one? No two crises are the same, right? Having that plan in place, and just being open about things. It just, unfortunately, the hard part is like getting in the door. Sometimes you can't talk to the leaders that you need to talk to.
Yep.
But sending emails up the chain, going, here, this is what we see, this is what we've got, and making yourself somebody that is trustworthy. It just takes time, and the tough part, especially being a freelancer, you have to do it all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's a postmortem, it's sharing a case study, it's being active on the email chains, tagging everyone that you need to tag, making sure that everyone is in the loop. Because when someone's not, that's kind of when that trust is being broken. So I think you kind of nailed it straight on the head, JS.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add is it just sort of a slight spin on what you've already said, but communicating constantly during the crisis. Like, if they want hourly updates, give them hourly updates, and give it to them straight. And I think you're right, JS, when you sort of try to hem and haw and like make something up, like people in those senior positions can smell that a mile away. Just present yourself with like, the expertise that you've got. And, if it's potentially coming up with templates for reporting before crisis happens so that you have something that you can plug and play. Jasmine, you're 100% right with, the postmortems, hugely important, right? What worked well, what didn't, and make sure that you are able to, socialize those within your company organization. And I think that's probably the best approach. So, well, 56 minutes in, we've still got over 50 people watching, which is pretty remarkable. And I wish we could spend all day with you all, but like all of us have clients that we need to get back to. But I want to thank everybody for joining. Like I said, like we had just an overwhelmingly positive response. This video will remain on my page, and we'll also upload it on YouTube. And JS and Jasmine are also going to be, I'm sure, posting clips probably from Opus as well. But I also want to thank my panel. You both have been wonderful to do this with, and you're so knowledgeable and social. And I could see the comments are 100% positive, which on any social channel is a difficult thing to do. So kudos to everybody here, and kudos to the panel or to the audience who came prepared with such great questions. So we'll do this again soon. Thank you very much, guys, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.